In 1975, I was 15 years old, and I wrote a paper. I'm getting chills as I share this. I wrote a paper on how we were overfishing our oceans for my biology class in the eighth grade. She's got a baffled look on her face. Exactly. I don't,
From Phoenix.
from Phoenix. About 15, 20 years later, I was giving a lecture at a bookstore in Phoenix, and I said that, and somebody raised their hand and they said, "Did you ever watch Jacques Cousteau?" And for me, it was this. I had to stop, and I teared up a little bit.
This episode of Grounded in Maine is sponsored by ESG Review. ESG Review magazine is published quarterly in February, May, August, and November, and is available for free in print and digital formats. ESG Review is devoted to environmental, social, and governance strategies, technologies, and investments. ESGreview.net is updated every Wednesday with 8 new stories and is home to feature articles, news items, and more. Visit esgreview.net to stay informed and help us spark the collaboration and awareness needed to develop sustainable economies and communities around the world.
There's a place where there's no trouble, no more pain, no more struggle.
Grounded in Maine podcast is an open conversation about how we show up for the world. I started this podcast out of a desire to learn new ways to be sustainable because the word sustainability is big. It can be overwhelming, and I just wanted to learn, different ways to try to be part of the solution and not feel like it's too late. So I'm talking to people who are doing different things and learning so much. I hope you are too.
Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to Grounded in Maine today. My name is Amy Fagan, and my guest today is Greg Peterson. And if you don't know Greg Peterson, we all should, especially like right now, things are a little weird in the world. And Greg's got some really, really great information that he's going to be sharing with us. So Greg Peterson is the podcast host of the Urban Farm Podcast. And he has over 900 episodes, I just found out. He also is a seed guy and not just any seed. So I'm going to let you tell us about that, Greg. But thank you so much for being here and hanging out with me today.
Oh my gosh, blush, blush. Thank you for all the kudos. I appreciate it. And I love chatting gardening and sustainability. So let's do it.
You. So let's start with the seed up. What the heck is the Great American Seed Up, and why?
Why? That's really the bigger reason is the why. And I, about 15 years ago, decided that I wanted to put a seed bank in Phoenix, Arizona, because I saw that in the case of an emergency, the only place locally to get seeds is big box stores and a few local nurseries.
Mhm.
And usually the collection of seeds in those places is small. So good luck with that. So
And treated and the packages are
exactly.
so small and expensive and
Yeah, all that. And so I met Bill McDorman about 20 years ago. He's a 40 plus year seed guy in the country, and he has since become one of my partner in the Great American Seed Up. And he and I went to his week-long seed school in Tucson. So I went and learned for a week on seeds and how to save them and all that kind of stuff. And during the event, I said, I want to start a seed bank. And he said, great, here's a guy to buy seeds from. And I spent a couple $1,000s on bulk seeds, bought, I don't know, 400 or 500 pounds of 50 different seeds or something like that, and stuck them in a freezer. Yeah, I'm storing them in a freezer. And voila, I have a seed bank. And then he comes back around a little later and he says, Greg, that's not going to solve the problem. I
okay.
said, I said, okay. The problem is that in Phoenix there's 4.7 million people, and you have 2, 3, 400 pounds of seeds in a freezer. It doesn't fix the problem. And I said, what's going to fix the problem?
Tell me
And
the answer, Bill.
yeah, and he says a seed bazaar.
What?
Yeah, a seed bazaar. So he and his wife Belle and Kari Spencer and Janice Norton, the five of us, decided in 2014 to start a yearly event where we rent a 10,000 square foot room at a church and put a classroom in, because a big part of what we do is education. So there's, a couple thousand square feet of that is a classroom, and we have about 6,000 square feet of seeds. And so imagine this room with church tables in it and buckets of seeds. Literally, popcorn buckets is what we're using. And on each church table, there's two different varieties. And let's say that you're looking at the Armenian cucumber. And so you have a large popcorn bucket of Armenian cucumber seeds and a scoop, whatever scoop size we decide, for the variety of seeds. And that'd probably be a tablespoon for the Armenian cucumbers,
Mhm.
and a Ziploc bag and a business card talking about Armenian cucumbers.
Okay.
So when somebody walks in the door, they get a tally sheet that has all our different varieties on it. And they're walking through the event. They stop at the Armenian cucumbers and they decide, oh, I want to get a scoop of Armenian cucumbers. So they take the tablespoon and they scoop up a tablespoon of Armenian cucumbers, put that in the bag, put a business card in the bag, which tells you how to plant them and all the stuff that you get on a seed packet, right? And then they mark on their tally sheet, I got 1 scoop of Armenian cucumbers. By the way, it's $1.25 for the Armenian cucumbers. So you're getting many more seeds that you would get in a normal packet for much less of a price.
Real.
That's the Great American Seed Up. We've been doing, this was our 10th year in 2024, was our 10th event. We usually get about 600 people that show up to the event, so it's a big event. And we're usually selling about 8 to 10,000 scoops of seeds per
That's
event,
amazing.
which is totally amazing. And for me, this is an opportunity to really put a good piece of seed saving information in place and seeds in people's refrigerators and freezers, because we teach them for seeds, you want to keep them cool, dark, and dry.
Mhm.
And the best place to store your seeds is in the freezer. And what I suggest people do is get gallon jars and put in that gallon jar, you put your seed packets, usually in, we usually use them in plastic, or you can put your paper seed packets in there. You just put them in the gallon jar, seal it up, stick it in the freezer. That's how you long-term save seeds. And because I get this question a lot, what happens when seeds die? Seeds actually don't die, we kill them. And we kill them by keeping them too hot or too moist.
Oh, okay.
So,
And so I have questions on that.
okay, please.
First, this might sound dumb, but Phoenix, I just think of Arizona as this big fat desert. Like,
It is.
do you grow seeds grow in the desert?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, big time.
Oh, okay.
It
I just
takes,
think of cacti.
yeah, cacti is the pillar
You
cacti.
definitely don't have those in Maine.
Right, exactly. Oh, yeah. It's actually easier to grow in Phoenix than it is to grow in my new home, which is here in Asheville, North Carolina.
Oh, tell me more about that now.
Well, I thought we had pests and bug problems in Phoenix until I moved here.
Oh gosh.
Because it's hot and dry there, so you just plan your garden accordingly. The pest, the disease, the bug problems is exponentially greater here in Asheville, North Carolina, than it ever was in Phoenix.
You're not selling me on that area right now, Bill.
Oh, there you
Thank you,
go.
Greg. Sorry. Okay. Okay. And so pests they make a big difference, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. And then when you buy seeds in a packet, it
Hmm.
gives you like the year. It'll say like packed for such and such year.
Yes,
But you're saying they don't die, we kill
they don't. We kill them. Exactly. So that packaged year indicator is a rule from the federal government that,
them. Real.
yeah,
That's fake news.
it's fake news. Exactly.
As long
So
as you store it right. Okay.
exactly, cool, dark, and dry.
Hmm.
My seeds here in Asheville, North Carolina, are in 5-gallon buckets that are sealed.
Oh, okay.
That's how I store my seeds, and they're doing just fine.
Okay. I brought my seeds from Maine and I'm somewhat of a seed hoarder. I'm a seed hoarder.
I resemble that
Right,
remark.
you understand. But I when I they were on the moving truck for like 2 weeks in the summer. I'm
Mm.
pretty sure that they're all, but I'm still trying them and hoping. Anyway,
You could do a germ test
yes.
to take a wet paper towel. This is really quick and really easy. Take a wet paper towel and put 10, 20, 30, or 100 seeds on that paper towel in rows. Put another paper towel on top of it, wet it, roll it up, keep it wet for a few days, open it back up, see how many germinate. And then take that paper towel outside and plant the paper towel.
Heck yeah. Yes. That's a really good tip. I was so I did not think that they were gonna keep all my stuff on the truck for 2 weeks.
Mm,
I thought they were just gonna drop it at my house. But yeah, that was a super bummer.
yeah, I'll say.
Anyway,
So then COVID happens
sure did.
in 2020, and what do we do? So Bell, our business partner, says, well, let's make up a box and package seeds for people to buy in bulk. So now we have a bulk seed box called our Seed Up in a Box. You can find out about them at seedupinabox.com. And people can do their own Seed Up event anywhere in the country. And you basically, the way it works is our basic bundle is 25 varieties of 10 packets each. And they come in a big bag with the Ziploc bags and the business cards and a note to tell you how many scoops per, or how big a scoop it is. And you can make your own up. And that's even a better deal
That's really cool.
than our in-person event. They average out to about 80 cents a packet of seeds. And there's a video at seedupinabox.com that shows that whole process. And it's an explainer video for about 2 minutes.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And boy, and well, and so March 2020, COVID, that was right before spring planting.
Oh, yeah.
So that was
And
really that was a good pivot for you guys, I'm sure. Everyone was
yeah,
like, I'm gonna garden since I'm stuck at home, right?
right. Well, and seed companies were running out of seeds. I also run a fruit tree education program in Phoenix, and people can buy fruit trees from us. And we usually sell about 3,500 fruit trees a year.
Wow.
Been doing it for 25 years. It's a thing in Phoenix. It's pretty cool. And that year we went way over that number.
Wow. And
COVID,
what's the big deal about fruit trees? Like why not other trees? Just curious.
I only
I love
I
fruit.
yeah, I only plant things that you can eat.
Same. Okay.
Yeah.
Mostly.
So that's why the fruit trees in my gardens, and that's not quite true. Um, oh, Lisa Ziegler. You should reach out to her. She's a flower maven. She runs a flower farm. Really amazing author and speaker, and she's been on my podcast a couple of times. And she says 20% of your garden should be pollinators.
Yeah, that makes sense
Of course, right?
for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, if it doesn't, if you can't eat it, someone can. And the
exactly.
beneficials will definitely,
Yeah.
you get, it's a twofer. Yeah, I mean, I did plant in my new place, and we'll see if it lives, a maple tree, like a sugar maple. So I'm gonna try to
Oh,
tap it, but we'll see if it
well,
actually.
see, that's a food tree.
Right. But that was, everything else is pretty much a food. Yeah, it was gonna be a food forest. We'll see if
Yeah.
anything comes up. But that is such a cool thing. And I love that it's almost like a buffet. It's like a buffet for seeds. That's
Absolutely.
kind of fun.
Yeah.
And so well attended. That's super
Oh, yeah.
cool. And so that's in Phoenix. No,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah. Great American Seed Up is in Phoenix. And the bundles of seeds that we sell, we ship them all over the US.
Super cool. And are you, I mean, you're not in Phoenix, so I assume this is Bill running this, or you've got a
Um,
team. You've got a team.
Bill and Bell live in Mexico, actually.
Oh,
Janice, Janice is our team manager of this kinds of things, and
okay.
so she lives in Phoenix, and then we have an amazing team, Ray and Jordan, and a bunch of people that, I mean, it's a cool project,
Yeah, right.
and
Well, it's a big project, so you can't, it's not
yeah,
one man deal. Okay. And so you're not doing this in Asheville?
I'm not.
No.
No,
Okay.
no, no. So
I'm retired.
you are or I am.
You are.
A big part of why I wanted to move from Phoenix, and this was in the planning for over 25 years, as I was looking for someplace quiet. And so I'm not actually retired because I still run the seed company, I still run the fruit tree program, I still run my podcast, but I'm calling myself semi-retired. So I was looking for someplace quiet. I have teams in Phoenix that could run all the programs if I wasn't there. And it's actually, that's an entrepreneur's dream. I've been self-employed since I was 15. And one entrepreneur's dream is to have a business that you can pass on to somebody else. And both the seed company, which I helped create, and the fruit tree program, which I created, are pass offable.
Yeah. Well,
Those are
because
things.
because you're a really good leader.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I mean, clearly you're not there and it's still running. Like,
Yeah.
you
Well, and
did a good job.
I go back and visit Phoenix a couple times a year for the different events and stuff. So,
Sure. Well, I'm sure you've got people there after a bunch of years. Um, and so shall we move on to the podcast? That's really
oh,
exciting.
sure.
Oh, let's talk about the podcast. Uh, so Greg's podcast is called the Urban Farm Podcast,
Yep.
and let's hear about that. How did
Ah,
that start? Like, why did you start a podcast about urban farming? And this is a while ago you did this.
yeah, 10 years ago. Um, so we're going to go back to 1975.
Okay.
It'll be a quick story. It'll
It
only
was a
take
good year.
only about 3 hours. Just kidding. In 1975, I was 15 years old, and I wrote a paper. I'm getting chills as I share this. I wrote a paper on how we were overfishing our oceans for my biology class in the 8th grade. She's got a baffled look on her face. Exactly. I don't,
From Phoenix.
from Phoenix. About 15, 20 years later, I was giving a lecture at a bookstore in Phoenix, and I said that, and somebody raised their hand and they said, "Did you ever watch Jacques Cousteau?" And for me, it was this, I had to stop and I teared up a little bit at my lecture. It was like, oh my gosh, that's where it came from.
That's
So
right.
I knew at a very young age that there was something wrong with our food system. And fast forward to 1981, so I'm 20 years old at that point. I'm researching aquaculture, fish farming in Arizona, and I go to one of the fish farms and they're growing fish, harvesting them, cutting them up, throwing away 70% of the fish, the entrails, all the stuff that's left
Right.
over.
Everything but the fillet or whatever.
Yeah. And I looked at that and it was like, hold on, there's something wrong with that. So I actually designed what we would now call a regenerative farm on paper where everything gets used in the system. All right, fast forward now to 1991, and I had four things magically happen for me in 1991. I did my first permaculture design course. I like to call permaculture the art and science of working with nature. How do we work in the flow of nature rather than against nature?
Hmm.
So for me, that was oh wow, there's something I can call the way that I think. Thing number two was I read a book called Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. It's a conversation between a gorilla and a man.
Mhm.
And the gorilla is the teacher, and he's talking about how our food system has come to be the way that it is. And there were so many ahas in that book. It's an amazing book. Thing number three that happened, and this goes to the answer your question, why I did the podcast. I participated for about 4 years at a company called Landmark Education, the old EST training. And I did their advanced course, and they had me build a vision for my life. And my vision to this day is that I'm the person on the planet responsible for transforming our global food system.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's not a burden for me, it's what gets me up in the morning. And so that's why I took on doing the podcast. The fourth thing that happened in 1991 is a buddy of mine's going off to the South Pacific on a sailboat, and they anchor at an island looking for a grocery store. And they look at the people on the island, look at them and say, go pick your own.
Yes.
And so that year was a pivotal year. It was like, oh my gosh.
Right.
Yeah. And in 2001, I started the urban farm in Phoenix, Arizona. That was a quarter-acre property, 80 feet wide, 160 feet deep, about 80 fruit trees on the property,
You pick
chickens,
quarter of an acre?
quarter of an acre,
How many trees?
80.
So,
In permaculture, we have something called stacking functions and edge.
Mhm.
And so what I did across the front, 60 feet across the front of my property, I put 14 citrus trees. So it was the street, a berm, citrus trees. And so I put a hedge of citrus trees on the front side of my property for privacy
Mhm.
and for food. That's the stacking function part. Um, and yeah, and then in 2006, I started my first podcast called Freshly Green. It's no longer out there. We did about 80 episodes on living green, sustainability, how to be green, like that. And members of my special member club for the urban farm, they get access to those, so I still have them. And then
Oh, good.
and then in 2014, it was like, all right, we're going to do a podcast on urban farming. Back then, there wasn't one. And so I was listening to John Lee Dumas on Entrepreneur on Fire, and he has a Podcaster's Paradise School. So I paid $1,200 to him to learn how to start a podcast, and I followed it to the T. And the single biggest piece of advice I can give people that are doing a podcast or going to a farmer's market with groceries that you're growing in your yard, never miss a week.
Oh,
Never miss a week. I learned that. So
consistency. Yeah, for sure.
consistency. Went back to college late in life. And from 1999 to 2004, I was back in college getting my first and second degree. And I was farming my front and backyard, the third of an acre. And I would every week go to the farmer's market. And the manager of the farmer's market says, Greg, if you miss a week, you're going to lose customers.
Mhm.
So I implemented that then. And in 9 years, we'll be 10 years old in November, I have never missed an episode, even Helene week, Hurricane
Without
Helene
power.
week, without power. Well, I had Janice post, we reposted my 250th episode. So
Yeah, you had something to offer, of course.
Yeah, I had
Yeah,
something to
I
offer.
totally
So,
get that. I mean, as a podcast consumer myself, I listen to podcasts all day while I'm working.
hmm
I've found that if somebody is not on their usual schedule, like I have, I know when my
right?
favorites are dropping. And I have a friend who always she drops hers on Sunday afternoons, and I listen to it first thing on Monday morning.
Now there you
It
go.
wasn't there Monday morning, and I texted her. I'm like, "Is everything okay?" But
Oh,
usually I
nice.
don't do that. I'm just like, oh, well, I guess they're quitting, or they're off the thing. And so if they mess up their schedule, I notice that and I'm like, all right, next.
Yeah,
So I get
exactly.
that.
Yeah. So, and it's a passion project for me. I've never really made any money on it. The coolest part, and I think you'll get this, is talking to really cool people. The Urban Farm podcast is about telling people stories.
Yeah.
And the best part is when this happens. So, must have been about a year and a half ago. I get this email, and I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. And he was even on my podcast, but I've had, like I said, over 900 people on the podcast, so I can't remember them all. But I get this email from this gentleman. He's a long distance runner, recently retired, started listening to my podcast a year previous, started a 10 by 10 garden from listening to my podcast. Soon it was a 10 by 20, then a 20 by 40, then a 50 by 100 garden. And then he had
From
so
your little
much
podcast.
for my little podcast. And then he had so much food. He had so much food, he didn't know what to do with it all. And he was listening to one of my podcasts one day about going to a farmer's market and taking your food to a farmer's market. And so he started going to the farmer's market and he was having so much fun with it. He emailed me and he said, "Can I be on your podcast?" That
You
is the
betcha,
best of the best,
for sure.
right?
Yeah.
That's why I do my podcast.
Yeah. Do you know how he found your podcast? Like what do you know how he ended up listening?
I, maybe. I can't
If I remembered
remember.
his name, maybe. But yeah, I get that. Like whenever someone approaches me, I'm like, how did you find me?
Yeah,
That's just super fun. I love that. That's so
yeah,
cool. And so then it full circle, then he was on
yep,
the podcast to tell
yeah,
other people how
exactly.
to do it. That's amazing. That is so cool.
Yeah, and recently, actually, this week's episodes is on agrihoods. You know what an agrihood is?
Agri-hood? No,
Agrihood.
no.
Agrihoods are housing developments that are built around a farm.
No.
It's a thing. It's a huge, cool thing that's happening. And there's a big one in Queen Creek, Arizona. They're all over the place actually. There's one, the Olivet Agrihood is 5 minutes up the road from me. And so usually they have a weekly farmers market and CSA boxes and you know like that, right? Usually there's a little store. And so my guest this week on the podcast is her name is Sarah, and she's talking about agrihoods.
Awesome.
And I recorded her interview 3 months ago. I do batch processing on the podcast, and I get this text from her this morning out of the blue. She says, "Is our podcast ever is it gonna go up?" And I said, "Yeah, it's actually going up this week." And she said, "Great." And I had so much fun on your podcast. I'm starting my own on agrihoods.
Nice.
It's like
Just Jay.
it can't get any better. Right, that I texted her back. I said, "You can't believe I am actually editing your podcast and this text comes in." Another moment,
Right?
right?
I love that. That is so
So
cool.
there's so much cultural value for me in making that difference, and it supports who I am in the world. I'm the person on the planet responsible for transforming our global food system. And here's what I know about that. It's not my job to fully do it. It's my job to empower people.
Just to make it happen, however that
Yeah,
works. Absolutely.
yeah, exactly.
Wow, I love that. I love that,
Thanks.
Greg. Oh my gosh, that's an awesome story. And I get how you were getting chills. That's
Yeah,
it's so profound.
yeah,
To just touch your life and from 1991, you said? I mean, not going all the way back to 75, but like 1991 was when all the four things happened.
yeah.
Wow. And
Yeah,
then
well, and I kind of feel like I was born on the planet to do this. So it's half of it's a curse. Now, 10% of it's a curse because I can't walk away from it. I have tried. I was in technology. I've owned about 30 businesses in my life. Some of them lasted a sneeze, and other ones, the fruit tree program's over 25 years old. But my technology companies, I did that for about 20 years in the middle, trying to get away from this. And
right.
I always went back to it. It's like, this is what I'm supposed to do. So I just know that this is what I'm supposed to do.
I mean, it's good that you found it, and it's good that you found it early so
Yeah.
that you can transform the whole food system. That's
Might
God,
as well.
amazing.
Somebody's got to do it.
Someone's got to do it. My goodness.
Especially now. Our food system is tenuous at best
Yeah.
and tragic at worst.
Yes.
So,
And failing every day. Um, that I love the idea of seeds. And you were saying not just any seeds, right?
oh yes,
These are not just any seeds.
these are not just any seeds. They're
Oh no.
called open pollinated seeds. So there's generally, and this is a grand generalization, there's generally three kinds of garden seeds or food growing seeds. There's genetically modified, and the good news is that you for garden seeds, you really can't buy genetically modified seeds. Now, some of that genetic modification is just automatically happening, and there's a great likelihood that all corn seeds are genetically modified because their pollen is so everywhere out there. But mostly we don't have to worry about genetically modified seeds. Then there's hybrid seeds, and that's where you take watermelon A and watermelon B and you cross-pollinate them, and it makes a,
Stronger,
a
more resistant.
stronger, yeah, exactly. Um, you know, Seedless watermelons are hybrids.
Yep.
And nature magically does its own hybridizations. So this happens in nature. Hybrid seeds are not at all bad. I plant them. Um, you know, if you find something you like and it happens to be a hybrid, plant it, grow it out, save the seeds and plant them and see what happens. And then the seeds that we carry are called open pollinated or heirloom seeds.
Mhm.
And those are much more true to what you planted. So an Armenian cucumber, if you plant an Armenian cucumber in the ground, and save the seeds from it, you're pretty much going to get an Armenian cucumber, the same kind. Now, if you plant a tomato, a hybrid tomato seeds, and you could come up with some genetic version of the parents.
Mhm. Okay.
Quick story. When we arrived here in North Carolina, one of my jobs taken on, I'm a tree guy, right?
Mhm.
Was to plant fruit trees. So the second summer that we were here, I planted 160 fruit trees. That was a project.
That's a load. That's a responsibility to keep trying
Yeah,
to maintain.
yeah, exactly. And most of them are still alive. 155 of them or so made it. So, yay. And I have a very specific method to plant trees. You dig a square hole, you take 40% of the native soil, put it in a wheelbarrow, take 60% by volume, some kind of planting mix in the wheelbarrow, add 2 pounds of azomite, that's a vitamin pill for your tree, 2 pounds of worm castings, that's worm poop, and 2 ounces of mycorrhiza, and 2 pounds of organic fertilizer. That gets all mixed up in the wheelbarrow, and then you plant the tree with that. It basically sets your tree up for success.
You did
By do-
that for 160 trees.
yeah,
Wow. How many
yeah,
wheelbarrows is that?
a lot. There was about 20 of us that were planting, so
Okay.
it wasn't just me. Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that happened is that I used my worm castings. Worm castings or worm poop. That's how I compost. The first thing that I did when I arrived here in Asheville, because I hate to throw away food scraps, is set up a worm bin. So I had spent a year and 3 months harvesting worm castings out of this worm bin, and I took a cup of those worm castings and put them in every single hole. We ended up with 40 tomato plants growing out
On the
of
tree.
the around the trees.
Wow. That 40.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
And
awesome.
and that
How many worms do you raise? Like, do you have like a big worm bin?
it's called an urban worm bag. It's about $150. It's an amazing, it is absolutely the best way to worm compost.
Oh,
Flat out.
I'm gonna have to look into this.
Urban worm bag. I've been um, composting with worms for over 30 years, and I have tried virtually every system. And what they're doing over at Urban Worm Bag is mind-blowing. It's great. It's wonderful. And it's 2 foot by 2 foot by 3 foot tall.
That's it.
It's it.
Do they do
And
mealworms by chance too?
nope, just worms.
I need to figure out mealworms someday.
Yeah.
I had a
So,
mealworm. I had a worm bin for almost 8 years,
yeah.
but I forgot it in Maine.
No, there you
It would
go.
have died on the moving truck for sure.
Right, exactly. So, 40 tomato plants. And what I was able to ascertain was that the seeds were from the hybrid tomatoes that we had, because when you cut a tomato in half, there's a few seeds left on,
The cutting board.
on the cutting board, and um, they would get washed in the strainer, and the strainer in the sink gets dumped in the worm, right? We had jumbo tomatoes. We had watermelon tomatoes. We had yellow tomatoes. We had teardrop tomatoes, all out of the hybrid seeds. So we're back to the seeds now, all out of the hybrid seeds that were in the worm bin. It was magical to watch.
That's
It's
amazing. So, I mean,
absolutely,
free tomatoes.
yeah,
Wow, that's so cool.
yeah. It was mind-blowingly amazing.
That is very cool.
So, yeah, so back to those are open pollinated or heirloom seeds, and I pretty much just plant those because what happens is, well, let me tell another story. It's a quick one. When we arrived, I got a 15-gallon tree tub. I put some really good planting mix in it, and I planted some of my basil seeds in there. So this was 3 years ago,
Okay.
first year. So it grew out to the summer. I harvested basil. I let it go to seed. I stripped the basil seeds. I dropped them back in the bucket. Year number 2, basil starts growing. Do the same thing. I was just out looking at that bucket the other day. Same bucket, same soil. We got basil coming. That's why I like open pollinated seeds. They're true to form. And, this year, in year number, end of last year and into this year, we had come up in our garden without us planting it, 3 different kinds of lettuce,
Oh man, awesome.
cilantro, sorrel, basil. Yeah, I think that was about it. Just from letting things go to seed,
Hmm.
the seeds dropping. I didn't even save the seeds.
Right.
They just drop in the garden.
That's-
And we all know, if you're a gardener, we all know that the volunteers, the ones that plant themselves and decide where they want to grow, those are the ones that do the best.
Right.
Flat out, the best.
Yeah. I always worry about those things. Like I think that's so cool. And I always love, I had a kale plant that came back like 3 years in a row.
There you go.
But and sage did that a couple years ago. But
Yep.
I know you're supposed to move everything around. And then I'm like, is that gonna mess up with, I'm not a great gardener, but I really enjoy gardening.
Uh-huh.
So I always worry like because you're supposed to shift everything and those things did not shift. So but they
Well,
also just want to be there.
exactly. You know that shift thing is a human thing, right? It's not a nature thing. How does things work in nature?
Just do it.
That's right.
They do what they want. So
My property,
us forcing things is not necessarily helpful.
exactly. My
Oh my,
property in Phoenix, after I lived there for 32 years and planted open pollinated seeds for a majority of that time, there were always a dozen or two things growing that I didn't plant that year that I could go out and harvest. Because it's just like a forest.
right.
Nature just does what nature does.
That's awesome. Okay.
Let it be.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope to have that happen again someday. But that's
Right.
awesome. I mean, so did you have to like did you garden did you raised bed garden in
Here.
Phoenix? There.
Oh, and there in Phoenix. No, I didn't.
Okay.
Only because I'd been growing the soil
For so long.
for
Yeah.
decades.
Yeah.
For decades. In fact, interestingly, um, one day I had to dig down I to see how deep the soil was. I had over 2 feet of healthy soil that I had created over 3 decades um,
That's amazing. Because isn't it,
before we hit dirt.
yeah, the soil is dying at a rate of like
Yep,
I mean, there's
I
maybe
rated.
2 inches at best in a lot
Yeah,
of places. Is that right?
something crazy like that.
Yeah, 2 feet. Awesome. Greg, this is so fascinating. I'm having such a great time.
Aw, thanks. I am too.
And I can't wait to listen to that episode on the agrihoods. That's
Oh
super
yeah.
interesting. Uh, I I want to be mindful of your time, but is there any message that you want people to remember from this conversation specifically? And I didn't know about open pollination, open pollinated as a phrase. So that's used interchangeably with heirloom. Is that
Heirloom open pollinated is any seed that is long time stable. Heirloom is kind of a slippery slope, but it's the more ancient versions, I'm doing air quotes,
right?
more ancient versions that are stable. So they're not quite interchangeable, but in my head they are.
They're as close to the same thing as anything.
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yes, yes. Um, Plant and grow something. The most important thing we can be doing right now is figuring out where our food comes from and how to grow our own. Our food system is tenuous at best, tragic at worst, and when you grow your own food, at least you know what's in it because you have pretty good control over that. And the other thing is the simplest thing to grow and the most expensive thing to buy in the grocery store is
What?
herbs.
Really?
Well, look at the price. You pay $4.99 for like 2 ounces of basil. Basil grows
True.
wild.
And it's always more than you need for a recipe, and so it's gonna go bad.
Exactly.
And so then there's the waste part for sure. I was
Exactly.
thinking tomatoes or like the winter squash because it's per pound.
Yeah, no, neither of those. Tomatoes are a more advanced one. I know it's the gateway drug seed to get into gardening, but tomatoes aren't easy to grow.
Right.
They're not necessarily really hard. But basil, oregano, thyme,
Yep.
cilantro,
Oh, they love the heat and the dry
and
sun.
cilantro loves the cold, exactly. You can grow them in a sunny windowsill. So the most expensive thing to buy in the store and the easiest thing to grow is herbs. Grow herbs.
Mm.
Have fun with that. Heidi, my partner Heidi came to me the other day. We have a quart jar of basil that I dehydrated. And she said, Greg, smell this, and it smelled incredible. And she said, I'm going to put this, I'm doing a quinoa salad for a potluck I'm going to. This is the basil I'm putting into it. And it came from our garden.
Right.
So
Because
there
you
you go.
did.
Do that.
Right. Oh, yeah. I love that message. I say that often, like know where your food comes from. And if
Yeah.
you're not able to grow it yourself, find a farmer where
Yeah.
it's just it's so important. It's so important, especially
Yeah.
now. Uh,
Right.
thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So Greg, when I say the word sustainability, what does that mean to you specifically? Like,
I do not I do not like the word sustainability. Sustainability simply sustains the mess that we've created. It doesn't fix anything. Now, it's a good gateway to what I like to talk about, which is regenerative design. How do we put regenerative systems in place?
mhm,
Um, I challenge anybody that's listening to me to come up with a human generated regenerative system that's on the planet. It's not there. I've been looking for 30 years. Regenerative is circular. Nature is circular. It recreates itself over and over again. It's the seeds that replant themselves every year without you intervening at all.
we're switching them around.
Yeah. And humans create only degenerative systems, systems that degenerate over time. So if you kind of put two and two together on that one, it's a mess.
Yeah,
So sustainability is a good starting point, but look into regenerative design.
right. Awesome. And then how can people find your podcast, find the Great American Seed Up? How do we find you?
The podcast is at urbanfarm.org. And the Great American Seed Up, you go to seedupinabox.com, and that takes you right to our Great American Seed Up site with some cool videos to watch. We're Urban Farm U on Instagram and The Urban Farm on Facebook. Those are the two that I play with mostly.
Awesome. Same. I just
Yeah.
have a couple little ones. Awesome. Well, Greg Peterson, my goodness, what a pleasure to hang out with you and learn from you. I'm so glad for all the things you're doing, and oh my gosh, 900 episodes.
Uh,
Um,
Thanks.
and growing.
And growing, exactly. Well, and I'll tell you what, my last week's episode was on sourdough bread baking, and the Eric was amazing.
Oh, cool. I've got a starter on my counter. I'll have to listen and
Yeah,
tips because I am not, I can do lots of baking, but yeast and sourdough are just not, they're like, I can't do it. I've
no,
said
there you go.
that, but I keep trying.
Well, I just have fun with it.
Awesome. Okay. Well, you guys definitely check out the podcast Urban Farm and check out the Great American Seed Up. My goodness.
You want to say that again?
I don't know if I can.
All right, cool.
The Great American Seed Up, you guys. Get some good healthy seeds and get growing, okay?
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yay.
I just want to take a second to thank my guest again for speaking with me and sharing such great information. I love having these conversations with folks. I also want to thank Buzzsprout for hosting the podcast, for Jane Bolduck and her music genius, for Becca Coffron and her award-winning artwork. And thank you for listening. I appreciate that so much. Please check out the show notes for any links and extra information. And if you would like to follow my guest and find out more about them, I'm sure they would love the follow. And if you don't mind leaving a rating or review wherever you're listening, and just help to get this podcast in front of new eyes, that would be amazing. I would really love that. And feel free to reach out to me on the socials and let me know what you're thinking. And if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please let me know that. I would love to have a conversation with you about sustainability. All right. Thank you again. I hope you have a great rest of the week.
There'll come a day, my mama told me, when I find love to have and hold me, a heart that's strong and so sincere. Just tell me, how do I get there from here? Oh, tell me, get there from here, 'cause here and now I'm so far down that mercy's bound to find me. We'll find a way to soothe the sickness, we'll heal the ache with sweet forgiveness. Wages of war will disappear. Just tell me, how do I get there from here? I wonder, how do I get there from here? Yeah, 'cause here and now I'm so far down that mercy's bound to find me. When that state of grace has finally found me, well, there'll be music, ooh, and good friends around me, yeah, yeah. And I'll just smile through happy tears.